talking about the truth about passive income. This is something that a lot of people don't really want to talk about and don't share within a lot of their videos. And that's the hard truth that passive income technically isn't passive. There is still a lot of work that goes into making money when it comes to these different niches of the passive income industry. Many people make it seem that passive income is something that you can immediately do it one time, have it set, and walk away, and it just continues to snowball this gigantic income on a continuous basis, and that's not the case. I've been doing this for 3 years, and I can tell you, passive income requires work. The concept of working a 9 to 5 day job or a standard 40-hour work week, as most people do, is something that most people are familiar with. You go in, you do your 8, 10, 12-hour day, and then you go home, and it's rinse and repeat every single day. Everything's usually 99.9% the same. When it comes to the aspect of a passive income industry, the concept is to work for yourself and as always make as much money as possible with as little work as possible. That's what most people think. And though this can be achieved, it takes work to make it possible. This can take a fair amount of time invested into the business. It can take a fair amount of money that can be invested into this business. It all depends on exactly what you're going to do for your quote-unquote passive income. Now, if you're going to do passive income, it's also wise to diversify your passive income, which means you not only have one, but you have multiple sources to be able to draw income from multiple different areas. Now, that could be the aspect of doing a affiliate marketing, such as promoting a product or service that you use, that your audience or your customers may use. Another aspect is selling your own products, whether it's a physical product or a digital product, such as an ebook, a course, templates, things of that nature, even graphics and things like that. Or you have the physical aspect of maybe you create jewelry, maybe you create statues, you do woodwork or stonework or something to that effect, and you sell a product to your customer. Either way, all of them still require some amount of work to be put into them in order to continue to create that revenue. In the beginning, it could take hours of your day. So if you're going to do something as a side hustle while you work your 9 to 5 job, you're going to have to figure out in your free time how much of that free time are you actually going to dedicate to doing that passive income. Because now you're going to have your 40-hour work week, or how many hours you work per week at your regular day job, and then you're going to have the aspect of your side hustle that's now going to be done in your spare time, which means now you're taking away from the time you have to eat your dinner or lunch or breakfast, or taking away from your hours of sleep that you might need to work your regular day job. Then you have to come up with the aspect of how much of this is actually going to help you in that one thing to be able to create enough income to be able to say goodbye to your 9 to 5. Or if you don't have a 9 to 5 and you're somebody who was like me, for instance, who didn't have a job and is on disability, you have that limited income to work with and all the time in the world, per se. But depending on your age and your living situation and all the other different variables, depends on how much you're actually going to be able to dedicate your time and effort into your passive income, which again can be hours per day getting things built. Because a lot of people, when it comes to the influencer and passive income community, especially on social media, a lot of people like to portray themselves as somebody who got lucky and made $1 million or 6 figures or 7 figures in a matter of days. Now, yes, some people are able to generate that kind of a income overnight. It's not impossible, but the reality is that that does not happen often because it's not really something that most people obtain quickly. It takes a lot of audience members, followers, things like that. You're going to have something that is worthy of going viral consecutively for days selling to make that kind of money, to make it that quick. The reality is most people aren't capable of doing that, and that's why we're here talking about it today, because I can tell you it takes effort, and if you aren't going to put in the effort, you're not going to get the income. And that's where, if you've noticed here on my channels, I've been slacking off on the content because I have to put time and priority into those that are bringing in the money so I can continue to make videos for you guys. Because time is money, and money is time. And you have to figure out a balance on how you're going to do things. What's going to be the most beneficial? Because I can tell you right now, if you put your hand into the honey pot and think, oh yeah, this is good starting out, and then you think, here, I'm going to go off and do this immediately right after, you're probably going to sacrifice on one or the other, and I can tell you that from experience because of running multiple YouTube channels, social media pages, and everything else that I do behind the scenes that you all don't see. You can snowball yourself into an effect of biting off more than you can chew. And if you do that, you're sacrificing in one aspect to gain a little bit in another area that may not actually benefit you and cost you in the end. Now, if the goal is to be able to generate as much revenue and income for yourself as possible, you have to figure out a balance between everything that you're doing to generate that income. It doesn't happen overnight. And in my experience, it took me a few years just to get to the point to where I could start doing something for money. And then once I did, it's not as much money as I was hoping I would be getting per month to be able to survive on, which means I'm still in that catch-22 struggle with the government on income issues. This is where things are difficult when it comes to the disability community, especially if you're on SSI or SSDI, depending on your situation. Depends on what your restrictions are, what your capabilities are, because if you're on SSI, they really don't want you to do things to where you can regain your independence. If you're on SSDI in the aspect of being blind, you have a little bit more leeway, but if you're not blind and you're on SSDI, well, you're in a catch-22 also, and you still have very strict requirements, which is where I'm thankful in one aspect but kind of screwed in the other because I have to deal with both SSI and SSDI, and yeah, that's a different story. We've talked about that in previous videos, so you can always check those out in the right times. Anyway, passive income can be beneficial, but can be very difficult in order to make a fair amount of money when you're first starting out. It is going to take time, and that's where the different aspects of things come in. That's why if you've read my book, Income Booster, 100 Plus Businesses to Work From Home and Ditch the 9 to 5, you can see in there from my personal experience from throughout the last 25, 30 years of my life, what I'm talking about in the aspects of what work has to get put into each of the different passive income opportunities that are out there, some of the tools you'll need, some of the resources, some of the ways to be able to market and things like that to be able to get your revenue flow going. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend that you do. It links in the description below. It's available in standard print, large print, and ebook, and working on the audiobook. Each of those topics requires its own dedicated amount of time that it's going to require out of you to make them work. You're going to have to figure out how much time that is for you specifically, because no two people are going to do the exact same thing in the exact same way, so you have to figure it out for your own operating procedures on how you're going to do things. Just know that things can be difficult. The smaller that you are in the aspects of maybe a social media following, it can be a little bit more difficult than somebody who has a few thousand followers. Even then, even if you have a few thousand followers, it still may be difficult for you versus somebody who has 1 million followers. That's the difference. None of us are the same. There's a lot of different variables that play into the passive income business. And that's why it's such a variable for everybody to be able to get that perfect advice to be able to make $100,000 in a month or $1 million a year or whatever number you want to throw out there. Passive income does require time and money. Nothing is 100% free other than those that you can start by doing just by like creating content on YouTube. However, even then, you might as well say you're costing money because you have an electric bill, you have a gas bill, internet bill, those things aren't free. So when it really comes down to it, the time is going to be the one thing that you have to put the most in. But in terms of investing money, you really have to look at what you're going to do and what all it entails, because that's where you're going to get your cost from. Now, if you're younger and you live with family and you don't have to pay bills, anything like that, well then in that aspect you do have a better chance at doing things at an absolute zero cost, because 9 chances out of 10 you've got a smartphone and can record a video on that or do whatever right there. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.